Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullrank, and every week I cover everything that's going on in the world of search engine optimization. We're talking things with the Google sphere. We're talking about blog posts, communities, new tools, you name it, I cover it. This week, got to hit up on the helpful content update. It's been rolled out. We'll discuss what's going on, where we're at, whether or not you should panic, or if it's just like a big old nothing burger. A little bit around link building, a little bit around e-commerce category pages. We got a really cool webinar coming up, and I am collecting nominations for an initiative that we did last year. So this is people supporting SEOs. There's been a wave of layoffs in the tech industry. There's a high demand for SEOs. And basically, I wanted to provide an opportunity for everyone to lift up folks in the industry. We did it last year, submitting like a 15, 30-second video testimonial all about an SEO that you adore, you think are doing great things, innovating, just an awesome person for our community or just in our industry. So there's a link in the description notes where you can fill out the form. The due date for that is September 28th. We'll be publishing on September 30th. Check out the version from last year. So many great contributions. It will make somebody's day. You'll make somebody's day if you give them props for the fact that you appreciate them and what they're doing in SEO. So, helpful content update. Finished rolling out. Well, it hasn't officially rolled out. You got to keep paying attention to Google documentation on the updates of when it's officially done rolling out. But it's not as big as Panda. It doesn't feel like there's been volatility to the extent that all the SERPs are up and down, like 11%. It's not that big. Actually, there was an interesting Twitter back and forth between Gabe and Google Search Liaison Danny Sullivan, where Glenn's like, well, my expectation was that this was going to be massive, and it really hasn't been. And Danny's like, well, I'm sorry that I gave you the impression that this is quote unquote medieval in terms of flipping the SERPs, but no, it's ongoing. It's going to affect people who are doing, spun out, bad, unhelpful content, but it's not necessarily going to be this Panda level type of algorithm update. Checking in terms of what's going on, what other industry experts are seeing. Lily Ray of Amp Digital has noticed that, for instance, a bunch of lyrics sites have been affected, which actually makes sense. Lyrics are just kind of aggregated content where for music lyrics, and some of them aren't even correct half the time. So a lot of them have seen negative impacts more than positive impacts, I guess. The big players are still doing fine. Dan Taylor saw a example that he can attribute almost exclusively to the helpful content update based on his tracking in Google Search Console. Elena Solis has seen some ups and downs. Gabe has seen some ups and downs. It's really interesting to see that this hasn't been massive, but it's still something that if you're not following Google's recommendations and best practices when it comes to providing helpful content, you could potentially see yourself get hurt. One thing that Dan mentioned, and actually I saw a few other SEOs mention, is that long tail keywords are being impacted. So Google's looking for more specific content that actually addresses a longer tail keyword. Those are keywords that aren't just, one or two words. They get more specific in what people are searching for. It's not going to have as much of a search volume, but it's going to ask for, something specific and helpful. In fact, really great video by the legendary Bruce Clay. Bruce went on YouTube and he basically spoke for about 18 minutes just talking about his thoughts on the helpful content update. Now, he said nobody actually knows what's going on. If they tell you that they do, they're lying because Google is a black box, but he has a lot of different ideas on what he thinks is happening. I highly recommend that you watch his entire video. The guy's been in the industry for decades and has seen algorithms come and go and knows what he's talking about. So check out Bruce's video. Also, when it comes to Google, there is a new format for SEO office hours. The awesome team of John Mueller, Martin Splitt, and Lizzie Sussman, who do the podcast together. Sometimes Garrett Elias joins them. But basically what they were doing is they were allowing people to submit their SEO questions for office hours, and then they could curate them more effectively as opposed to being on the spot. This first version is great. It's in the podcast format, so it's all audio, although you can watch it on YouTube with the audio. There is a form, which you can find the link in the description, to submit your questions for future office hours. But I think it worked. It, wasn't super high produced and doesn't need to be, just asking questions from the community. So check that out. That's in the description notes. So this week, Debbie Chu wrote an awesome article for Wix. It was all about kind of busting those myths and misconceptions about link building, specifically for SMBs. I like it because there is this kind of negative reputation in the world of link building. If you've ever received one of those emails, like outreach emails that has done no research about your website and is just asking for a link, like it leaves a really bad taste in your mouth. Debbie breaks it down. She talks about the fact that, these myths that you don't need to build links. You do. That link building equals spam. It doesn't have to be. That link building is as simple as paying for links. Well, you shouldn't do that in the first place. You earn it with good content, but that you do also need to actually do outreach and get your content in front of people. It's not automatically going to come to you. And then finally, that link building is the same as digital PR. It's not. A lot of digital PR is focused on brand awareness. Sometimes you can get placement in an article, but you don't automatically generate a link. And so that defeats a lot of the purpose when it comes to the SEO aspect of things. Great article from Debbie, and it'll kind of give you some new insights in terms of how, yes, link building is really hard and challenging, but it doesn't have to be scummy, or it isn't scummy, She lays it out really well. Check out her article. So Tom Critchlow put together another awesome article for the SEO MBA. Basically, he does a whole range of courses and content and books all around kind of mastering, talking to the C-suite and putting together high-level SEO programs. This article was all about how to make an SEO strategy, and it was based around this quote from the book by Richard Rummel, which is Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. What he says is the kernel of a strategy contains three elements: a diagnosis, a guiding policy, and coherent action. And so what Tom does in this article is he puts together these concepts in the context of SEO. So for instance, focusing on an actionable diagnosis, like traffic is down 20% year over year because competitors are outranking us for core commercial queries with better pages and faster link velocity. And then the guiding policy after that diagnosis might be, we'll invest in improving our core category pages with updated content and increased link building efforts. And then finally, the coherent set of actions is what you can distinctly do to support that guiding policy and, kind of address the diagnosis. So in this case, create editorial content, build new editorial page templates, fix the XML, sitemaps, and schema issues are his examples. And that last one isn't strictly related, but it's still necessary for success of the initiative. And then finally, making that business case. So putting it all together, putting together a spreadsheet. He has a great example in terms of the assumptions and the goals, and then what it would actually do in terms of ROI. Another great kind of guide from Tom about how at a high C-suite program level for SEO, you can put together a great plan and then ultimately execute. Speaking of planning and execution, Adam Gent put together another awesome article for the SEO Sprint. This was all about the concept of shared understanding, the issue of, is SEO documentation reliable? Why do projects fail? And he goes into this idea about, sometimes we'll have an initial plan, we'll all talk, and then we'll go off our own separate ways. And there are all of these kind of roadblocks or miscommunications or misunderstandings that ultimately result in the project getting stalled or taking way longer, scope exceeding. And so what he does is he talks about this idea of how you can build together and iterate along the way to improve things like reducing misunderstandings, reducing wasted time, highlighting the actual technical feasibility, reducing unnecessary complexity, reducing the defects. It goes down the line of how you can make sure these projects for SEO are effective and everyone has this shared understanding that we all imagine are on the same page the entire time from beginning to end of the project. A couple of actionable things that he recommends is, building shared understanding via like a virtual space, using like a Miro board to map out exactly what the plan is, actually drawing and sketching ideas. So there's that visualization and then we're on the same page. And then finally, schedule meetings. I know we all hate meetings, but I think if meetings are planned effectively and maximized in value, then they can be really effective. So, you have your discovery meetings, then your review meetings, then discovery, and kind of go through the process over the course of the whole project to ensure that, steps along the way, everyone's on top of their tasks, everyone understands what's going on. And then ultimately, SEO documentation isn't necessarily a place for gaps or breakdowns. It actually is a reminder. It's a source organic document that you continue to refer to and ultimately help the project be that much more successful. Awesome article by Adam. So case studies are fascinating. It's always really interesting to see when an SEO analyzes and dissects another website and tries to identify opportunities. Now, naturally, you don't always know what's going on behind the scenes, but sometimes from the outside looking in, you really can see possible strategies that the business could take. Kevin Indig does this from time to time on his Growth Memo newsletter, and this time he tackled Substacks. Now, Substacks does newsletters for content creators, helping them to monetize their paying audience, and he noticed that there are three opportunities when it comes to them increasing their revenue. One is taking a bigger cut from their writers. Two is trying to attract more writers to the platform. And three is trying to attract more paying customers to their writers. So assuming that you don't want to necessarily take a bigger cut, that's a little risky business model because there are other platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn that are building out publishing tools. How can you do the other two? How can you attract writers and payers? And one way he recommends doing that is through organic growth, through SEO. And specifically, right now, Substack is not taking advantage of all of this content being written on the site in terms of specific categories and topics. They're not even optimizing the title tags for their topics. So what Kevin highlights is different ways that they can improve their site architecture, improve the topics and the categories, and potentially take a chunk out of other media publishers that exist. I think it's a really interesting take. It's a good deep dive. Substack should probably hire Kevin for consulting, but appreciate that to think about things critically from an SEO strategy perspective. Check out his article. There are a lot of skills that you need to be an SEO, whether you're a technical SEO, on-page SEO, international SEO, local e-commerce, you name it, you need to understand how search engines read content. That said, there are a variety of soft skills that are equally important to be successful. And Petra Kis-Herczegh wrote this really great article all about the top soft skills SEOs need for Moz. So she tackled things like empathy, critical thinking, proactive listening, clear communication, and storytelling. I really like her approach to this. It makes sense because ultimately, when it comes to providing great content, you need to remove your own biases. You need to make sure whatever you're saying is clear. It needs to have a logical, critical thinking flow from beginning to end. Really solid article, a lot of insights in terms of those soft skills that you can develop, why they're important, and how you can develop them. Great work, Petra. So SEO consultant, my man Mike Ginley, put together a really cool SEO content audit spreadsheet that you can use with Screaming Frog. in essence, what it does is you make a copy of the spreadsheet, you import the Screaming Frog stats, and then you can kind of look through and identify clicks and impressions and whether or not something's indexable and the status code. And then ultimately use that audit to inform your strategy, in terms of updating your title tags and whether or not you need to fix broken links. It's interesting, but Mike Ginley said on Twitter, and I totally agree with him, the best SEO tool is the one between your ears. So you can use this tool. It's free. Just make a copy, get into Screaming Frog, get the information, and start auditing your content on what you need to refresh, what you need to maybe just monitor or leave as is, or, delete altogether. Obviously, if it's unhelpful, that's something you might want to do. But great tool and great free resource from Mike. This week, there was also another great podcast episode of SERPs Up, which is Wix podcast with Morty Oberstein and Crystal Carter. This time, they were talking all about the dreaded Google update. They had actually Barry Schwartz of Search Engine Roundtable on to talk all about, the history of algorithm updates, what to look for, what are the goals of that you're paying attention to. Like Barry talks about how you want to try to almost predict the direction that Google is going with the type of content they're looking for and how they're ranking different sites, because it's never completely explicit. Some algorithms are bigger than others. And then after the interview, which I thought was really interesting, is Morty and Crystal go on to talk about some of the different tools in the various weather reports. So whether it's like Rank Ranger or SEMrush or Advanced Web Ranking, they all have these reports where they're paying attention to the volatility of all the SERPs. But one thing that Morty and Crystal highlight is that all of them use different data sets. Moz and SEMrush, they're all tracking different keywords and using different data sets. And so you're never going to see apples to apples when it comes to the volatility of these reports. So that's why there's value in paying attention to all of them to some extent. You're always looking for directionality. You're always looking for trends when it comes to these algorithm updates, like this helpful content update. So really great article. They've got great chemistry. It's really fun when I say article, I mean podcast. Really fun to listen to these folks banter around. I enjoy it. So check it out. Speaking of podcasts, I had a really awesome interview last week with Rob Lennon of Maven. Now, Rob is a demand generation guy. He's worked a lot with AI content. He has a lot of strong opinions about SEO, despite not actually being an SEO himself. So we discussed, with this whole helpful content update, the risks around using raw AI content. He shared his perspective on this idea around topic constellations, which are a more nuanced version of topic clusters. All in all, it was a great conversation. Rob is an excellent follow on Twitter. So definitely check him out if you want to improve your writing, improve your content. Rob is fantastic. This week, I'm really excited. We have a great episode with Mansi Kano talking all about major SEO projects, especially working with larger clients. I really enjoyed talking to her all about that. Touch a little bit on international SEO. And then on Thursday, please, if you are in e-commerce, you have to join me and my boy, Zach Chahalis. Zach and I are doing a webinar all around Black Friday SEO, things to start next week because you're already too late. Frankly, being mid-September, it's kind of too late to do a lot of Black Friday and holiday SEO work. But with the product reviews update, with the helpful content update, and just, things with the recession and supply chain issues, it's still really important to try to improve and iterate on your content like now, like yesterday, but like now. So we're going to provide a whole bunch of tips and strategies and talk about the current environment, ecosystem that we're in when it comes to the world of e-commerce and what the next couple of months might look like for SEO. So you can sign up. There's a link in the description notes to register. We hope you join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's it. That's another episode of the SEO Weekly in the books. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullrank. Thank you so much for checking us out. If you did enjoy this episode or any of my episodes or any of my SEO content, please subscribe to the channel, give us a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of everything that we're going over. Anything interests you, anything that you want to see going forward. I always appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you. We'll catch you next week. Thanks again. Have a great week and, get your SEO on. I don't know, is that a tag phrase? Are we doing that?